those people who maybe don't have time or money for tech, they should still like listen and read up about it, because sometimes there's solutions that end up being like very easy or free or something that all they have to do is just take advantage of it, and then their business will get the benefit.
Welcome everyone to More Than Tech podcast. Today we have Andrew Kinnear from Yellofruit. So Andrew, you're the co-founder and CEO of Yellofruit, a plant-based alternative to ice cream. I mean, you're in so many stores. It's crazy. Everywhere I go, I see Yellofruit everywhere. I turned vegan last year, and this is something that I've also had, so this is an awesome thing. Before Yellofruit, you were in consultant, digital marketing space. You spent some time at Tim Hortons, OLG, and a bunch of crazy big name companies. So I can't wait to dive into all things on tech, as well as things that are a little more than tech in today's episode. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here, Tim.
So Andrew, what are you up to nowadays? I mean, what is Yellofruit? What are you doing?
So I hang out in my basement a lot, try to look busy, No, Yellowfruit is, it's a traditional packaged goods business with the added complexities of being frozen food and all the challenges that come along with that. So a few years ago, my wife and I started this business, and she's very smart. She has all the brains, and I do all the legwork that I can do. And we decided we wanted to be in the ice cream business. The product itself stems from a dairy allergy that she has, and a sensitivity to dairy that one of my sons had when he was born. So we used to start making, banana-based ice cream essentially when my kids were born, and we would feed them this stuff and call it ice cream, and it was a lot of fun. We decided we wanted to get into the business. Now, along with that comes a lot of challenges.
So you actually solved the problem that you had in your own day-to-day.
Absolutely.
And made a product out of that. Wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of CPG businesses start with a problem they're trying to solve. If you meet any small business owner in Canada, they're trying to solve a problem, and a lot of them are personal problems, whether it's an allergy or some issue that they found. People start service businesses because they can't get service. So for us, it was the same thing. It was a very personal, sort of family challenge we were trying to solve. And that led us down a path, which we then layered in our work experience, our expertise in various things to try to make ourselves successful with this brand. So,
I mean, you mentioned you had a lot of challenges along the way. What are some of the challenges that you've faced in the past 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, the challenges are varied. Let's say that they're all over the map. So because I'm not a food scientist, and yet I started a food company, that's like red flag number one, right? There's going to be a lot of challenges, not red flag, but like challenge pile number one. So anything to do with food safety, food science, food chemistry, nutrition, ingredients, all of that stuff, I had zero experience in that. As you mentioned in the opening, like my background was technology, consulting, marketing. I wasn't an expert in food. So I had to solve and learn. I had a huge learning curve when it came to the food stuff. Now, the nice thing is, once you figure that out, so with our product, once we had our product developed, we figured out where we were going to get ingredients. Different than I think a lot of businesses, packaged goods they become very slow moving, in the sense that, like, I've got a recipe, I've got, production. I can't just change suppliers or change my recipe on a dime. So it's not as nimble, say, as a business that is tech, right? If my business were, a mobile app that I could continually push updates, and the end user is going to continue to get like a better and better product, that's an entirely different model. Something like food, For me to change my recipe means you may not taste the new recipe for like a year, because of, inventory and packaging and things like that. So there's you end up with challenges, that are just you just can't solve certain things. And so, yeah, I mean, we tackled the food parts of things one way, and then, stuff where we could leverage technology. So, for example, all the marketing, getting people to hear about us and try the product, we tried to do that as much as we could.
Now, do you think the reason the industry as general is slow, is it because of lack of tech, or is it because there's a lot more than just technology, such as regulations and people?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's not that it's not that things move slowly because, of a lack of technology. I think things move slowly because they're they're almost real world things, versus tech is almost this fantasy world where you can change things really, really quickly, right? So in my world, you know, even in my background, right, you see those lids on the packaging.
Yeah.
If I wanted to change something on the lid, I'd have to blow through, 10 pallets of lids that I have sitting in storage before I even got to the new lid. And so that's money. And so it just comes down to how much money, cash flow, and all this sort of traditional business, type challenges. If you're a really, really big company and something to do with your package needs to change, you can just change it and you write off the packaging you have to recycle, and away you go. But small businesses have to be really cognizant of inventory and ingredients and things like that. Packaging, especially, it's expensive. It doesn't go bad, which is good, but I have to store it. So that it's like just traditional kind of business type challenges.
So how many retailers are you guys in right now?
So we're in about 1,200 retailers across the country. We're in,
Wow.
all the big chains. Actually, no, not all the big chains. We're in the big traditional supermarkets, Sobeys, Metro, Loblaws. We're not in Walmart or Costco for a lot of different reasons. And then a ton of independents. There's a lot of small specialty food stores, even smaller chains, like Longo's, those kind of chains, where they appreciate high quality, locally made products, and, so they put us on the shelf. It's been great. We're also in. Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry. Go
go ahead,
ahead.
go ahead, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, we're also in a category that is, sort of new-ish, right? So plant-based foods are still an emerging space. It's changing all the time. So we get a lot of eyeballs from the buying side of things at the retailers, watching new products and trends. And then specifically Yellowfruit, non-dairy ice cream has been around for a while, but the idea of banana-based versus, say, coconut or almond or soy or any of these other, non-dairy ice creams, we're sort of in that newish space within a newish space. So that's been great for us, because when somebody tries the product, when a buyer tries the product, sees how well the brand is doing, in Canada, they say, yeah, this is something we want. We want to add this to our assortment.
Wow. And your business model right now is primarily retailers across the 1,200 chain, right?
Yeah, it's 100%, supermarket, retail, grocery, um, due to the nature of our product. So believe me, if I sold a granola bar or something that I could keep at, ambient temperature and ship myself, we would be e-commerce up the wazoo.
Direct to
But
consumer.
because ice cream is so tricky, actually, it's not tricky. It's easy. It's expensive, right? If I wanted to ship you a pint of yellow fruit, before I even got to the cost of my product, I have like $20 worth of styrofoam and dry ice and labels and just stuff I got to do to send that. So we opted out of e-commerce very early on. And same with food service. So in the food space, you can kind of go both sides. You and I know from our RBI days. There's the supermarket side of things, and then there's the restaurant side of things, and they operate so differently, and they're just so, they have so many different challenges, different benefits, pros, cons, etc. And what we thought was, since we're trying to build our own brand, we're going to stay out of the food service space. Which, when you think about it, when's the last time you went to a restaurant and you knew the brand of ice cream that they were going to put with your pie. Like, no, nobody, that isn't a thing. So food service made sense for us to stay out of. And then hindsight being 2020, when we look back at the pandemic, food service just got decimated. So that would have been a huge part of our business going away had we tried to, do both. So we stuck with supermarkets, stuck with grocery, and it's been great.
We've been talking about e-commerce, direct to consumer, and obviously that's where you look at traditional business models and you look at digital business models. Digital business models are all direct to consumer now. There's all these startups entering. It's given the rise to brands such as yourself to come and either become a retail first model or a direct to consumer model. What are your views on the future of B2C?
I'm a big fan of giving customers as many possible ways to get your product as possible. So that being said, there's always going to be different low-hanging fruit. Some people see traditional retail as really hard or costly. Like, oh, you mean I've invented this thing and I have to go sell it to a bunch of stores? What if they don't like it? Maybe I'll just sell it myself. I'll sell it on my website. The challenge is now you're selling directly to consumers. You have to convince millions of people if you want to not go broke. So a hybrid model of, everything from direct consumer marketplace style where I'll sell through someone else, Walmart, Amazon, et cetera, and then actual traditional retail, grocery, et cetera. And then even go so far as to, I'm going to open my own store. I have this product. I'm going to open my own store, physical bricks and mortar to sell it. And that will complement my marketplace, my e-commerce, et cetera. So it depends on the category, right? Ice cream is pretty specific, but assume you have a random thing, a random widget. You want to be able to sell your product, I think, in a lot of different places. That's what's going to move it.
One of the things that I always discuss with a lot of the executives I work with is there's this notion that, I think, take your example. You want to be in brick and mortar, D2C, retail, third parties, sell on Instagram. I mean, you got all these different channels, right? And there's this notion that technology will solve that problem for you. There's a lot of things wrong with that, but I want to hear from you. What comes to your mind when you hear that?
I think a sucker's born every minute. I think there's people with lots of money who can solve problems with technology. And I'll use a different example. So rewind like 10 years ago, things were not as, things like put air quotes up here, making a website were, for someone like you and I, really easy, right? We would just figure it out. We would just it's easy. In fact, I did that for some people who asked me. For some people, that was very difficult. They could sell houses or start restaurants or whatever, but the idea of a website was like insurmountable technological fantasy. They just couldn't do it. And so they would use their money and they would pay someone. And there's lots of businesses that have been built on the back of making websites for people. So I think knowing your strengths, I'll sort of go to a higher level here. Knowing your strengths is certainly best for your business. So if you don't know anything about technology, you should try to learn it, but also know that it's not going to be your expertise. If you're a chef, focus on the food, make sure the food is amazing, and pay someone to be your technology person, or pay an agency, or just pay someone who knows what they're doing to help you. Versus trying to become an expert in digital when you're a chef, or, as just an example.
So
I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, absolutely. And I would love to dive into this part now, Andrew, because you brought up a great point that I live by. It's, you need to be self-aware of your strengths, and for you to do anything, whether it's digital transformation, whether it's launching a brand, you have to have the right people beside you that complement your strength.
Absolutely.
I think that's probably like such an important concept, simple concept, that a lot of people don't take seriously. And I've seen big brands that haven't done it right, that bring in people with the exact same skill set, and then you have a huge gap in what you actually need to survive or to execute, versus some folks that are, again, too much on the other side, which is a lot of variety, but not a lot of people actually doing the execution part either. So, I mean, I'm sure you've seen ton of examples of that in your career.
Totally. Um, yeah, I mean, probably a couple from every job I've ever had. There's going to be people who know things and people who don't. And some of the things I learned over my career of working for others, and certainly working for very big brands, which now I can look back on in my wisdom and my gray hairs, and I can look back and go, wow, I was such a pompous, arrogant asshole sometimes when it came to trying to teach, senior people around me the things that I knew and were sort of just inherent in my generation, say. Um, I must have been such a jerk sometimes to people who certainly knew their stuff and just didn't know my stuff. So I think that dynamic of being able to share information and understanding how other people bring value to a discussion is great for entrepreneurs to, back to what you were saying, where, if they know their strengths and they can bring in people who can help them, they should. For me, I've gone through that, lots of times in my career, both where I was the young whippersnapper who knew stuff, and now, especially, like, I'm not that old, but I think of myself as like still knowing things, and then somebody will, tell me something new that's happening, and I'm like, oh God, I don't know anything anymore.
Yeah.
Here I am, just an old guy. But it's because it changes very quickly, which is why you want to tap into expertise.
For me, it's when all of my younger cousins start using these different acronyms, like,
Yes.
starting with all these things they use on WhatsApp. I mean, I think I'm getting old when I'm like, what? The question for you then on that, and I love this topic, Andrew. What, and now think about all these people that are listening. So brands that are trying to become digital, leaders in these brands trying to make their brands digital, or even leaders that are trying to become digital first leaders. What are some of the gaps today that technology first leaders need to cover? So what are some of those things that they're lacking today?
That's a really good question, Tanvir. I think understanding how you build a team. You know what? I'll start with this. It depends on the company. If you are a really big organization, so I think back to my days at OLG, right? So semi-government, huge business, big revenue, big expenses, lots of people, huge footprint across the province. And yet this is something that this is a brand that was all about people, right? So it was about having people and expertise and outsourcing to agencies a lot of the execution. So you're not outsourcing the thinking, you're not outsourcing the strategy in most cases,
Mm-hmm.
you're outsourcing the doing, right? So it's like, we thought this up, but we're not going to hire 50 people to execute this. We're going to pay an agency to execute it. So being able to structure what you're doing in that respect, I think, is really valuable for big businesses. For smaller, smaller, medium-sized businesses, the challenges start to blend. So you have to take on yourself some of the doing, try to learn as much as you can, but then you'll eventually hit a point where you do need to bring in help, hire an agency, whatever, get a consultant, do that kind of work. And then there's, call them small entrepreneurs, single, sole proprietor type people who basically have to do everything themselves for two reasons. One, they can't afford, in a lot of cases, to outsource. Their business is so small that they can't just
Yep.
hire a digital agency to do all their stuff. They have to just basically teach themselves how to do something and then do it and hope it all works out. And then they grow their business from a traditional, sales and revenue and that sort of thing. Part of that is part of the reason or the output from that is so interesting, because if you look at so many small businesses, you will find less so more and more because the technology is making it easier, but you will find small businesses that have a great product but have, like, say, a terrible website, or don't know how to talk to people on Instagram, or a whole checklist of things that you're like, why aren't they doing this better? And it's because they're busy, like, churning the butter or whatever they're doing, right? They're making the stuff. And so they don't have time. They don't care. They put up a website 3 years ago. It's good enough. Stop by RR3 wherever I live to pick up my, organic honey or whatever it is, right? So they're just not concerned about it. Once that honey starts flying off the shelves at 5,000 retailers, they can afford to bring on somebody who can, you know what, we could sell e-commerce, we could spiff up this website or whatever. So it's almost like it's like a badge of honor for a lot of small businesses. Not that they even, in a lot of cases, realize it, but they just don't care. They don't care about some stuff because it doesn't affect the core part of their business. Even though to someone like you and I, we would look at it and go, well, why aren't they doing it? They could triple their business if they, had a e-commerce component or whatever it was. So depending on the size of your business and your willingness to take on work, I think that can really affect, all these different outcomes.
I think it goes back to knowing what are your key competencies, right? Your key success factors, and what are you going to be focusing on, and what are the things that you're not going to focus on until you're a certain size, because you should be focusing on things that are going to be driving you the most ROI in the short term.
100%.
And that might be tech. Some of the technologies might help you with that, or a lot of things might not be that. So that's a great way to answer the question. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Let me add one more thing to that answer, and that is, those people who maybe don't have time or money for tech, they should still, like, listen and read up about it, because sometimes there's solutions that end up being, like, very easy or free or something that all they have to do is just take advantage of it, and then their business will get the benefits. I'm an example where we use a kind of off-the-shelf platform-based thing for web. I'm using a couple of little tools, and I might upgrade them to the premium version at like a couple of bucks a month, but it's not like we're not paying thousands and thousands of dollars for services for a business that is selling 3 SKUs at 1,000 plus retailers. So knowing where to focus too. One day we'll have to do certain things, but if I can use like a Wix website to get things done, Bob's your uncle.
Exactly. And I think also,
shout out to Wix.
Yeah, exactly. Sponsor us. Last question for you, Andrew. So what's one piece of advice for entrepreneurs, leaders trying to thrive in this era of digital disruption?
Never stop learning. So as much as we were just talking about how old and busted we are, trying to always stay up on things, reading as much as we can online. Like, don't read 20-year-old business books. I mean, sure, read them, but read the news, read, and just keep up with what is happening. Watch your competitors, and also like adjacent businesses you envy. Watch them like a hawk. Do you see them do something cool? Figure out how they did that. You're like, maybe they just found some platform and they are now doing something that you could do, and you could disrupt them. If they're your competitor and they're bigger than you, maybe they're slower than you. Can you be faster? Can you be more nimble just because they're already getting big and slow? So watching and listening and learning, I think just never stop doing that. As much as a business owner can focus on product and like, I'm going to have the very best product there is, that only goes so far. If nobody's eating your food, if nobody's buying your widget, if nobody's subscribing to your service, then who cares if it's the best, right? So
a follow-up question to that before I know we're on time. Follow-up question to that though is, a way to do that, Andrew, is hiring the great people when you have capacity, right? Mm-hmm. What's one piece of advice for businesses when they're looking to hire someone? Who should they find?
They should definitely hire Tanveer. No, I'm just kidding. I think just in general, hiring is one of the most important things that shouldn't be rushed, right? So this is somebody else's advice, like the Netflix guy or something, but like take a long time to hire, don't take a long time to fire, right? So meet a lot of people, find the people that have the strengths that you're looking for, try them out. If it's not a fit, if they're not a brand fit, a culture fit, cut them loose. It's good for everybody, right? Like nobody wants to have baggage. So yeah, I think that's my advice. Hire slow, fire fast.
Well said. Awesome. Andrew Kinnear, CEO and co-founder of Yellowfruit. Honored to have you on the podcast, man. It's been a great show. Thank you.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thanks, Amber.
Thanks. Thanks for watching the video. We hope you found the content valuable. Please visit tbxdigital.com for other resources, videos, blogs, or to get in touch.